In our efforts to combat extremism, we are confronted with some very serious moral and ethical questions about what kind of dissent is allowed. Of course, many of us, those who watch my videos, we're not happy with Antifa going around smashing up buildings, burning small businesses to the ground, and we're not happy with the ideology that backs it, nor are we happy with them gaining power. So, of course, we say law enforcement should stop them. But many of those people would not be happy with Gadsden flag waving patriots doing the exact same thing. And of course, we see the federal government going hard after those who were involved in the January 6th riot. So it is very difficult to know where that line is when we're talking about dissent and what is acceptable. I'll tell you this, in my opinion, when Antifa goes around smashing up small businesses, they're not targeting government. They're targeting regular working class people. Yeah, I'm not okay with that. The founding fathers didn't say the security of a free state must be maintained by destroying the small businesses of regular working class people. No, the Second Amendment says a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, because it's specifically addressing when a government is no longer representing the people. And it's also specifically referencing should foreign invaders come to our soil. I want to make sure that's clear. Now, this story, Joe Biden, he said Patriots who want weapons to take on the U.S. Gov would need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. This article we have, it's from timcast.com. And when I saw that headline, I was like, Biden says Patriots who want weapons. Is this a little hyperbolic? Let me make sure we're not misframing this, because did Biden really say that? Or did he say, like extremists? No, he literally said Patriots. He said the people who talk about the blood of patriots. He's making a specific reference to those who say the people who love this country are willing to give their lives to defend it from tyranny and authoritarianism. And then Biden effectively threatens them with, oh, yeah, well, you're going to need some F-15s and nuclear weapons, which is just ridiculous and absolutely not true. Right now, Joe Biden wants to crack down on crime, he says. So what does he do? He targets gun owners, he targets gun stores, and he wants to use COVID relief funds for police departments to refund the police. Now, to a certain degree, I would like to see police functioning and well-funded, but we're getting to this dangerous period where many of the good cops have been crushed and forced out. Not that every single cop was good to begin with, but certainly the ones I've talked to, many of the guys who are like, I couldn't stand for what they were doing, so I left. Yeah. Now they're going to retain and replace these individuals. They're going to retain the bad cops, and they're going to bring in the Praetorian Guard, the people who don't care, who will do exactly what they're told. And that's where it starts getting worrisome when it comes to the expansion of policing as we're seeing it. Joe Biden and his cult and whatever this group is that is occupying, the cities in this country, or I should say the institutions, the woke cult is what I'm trying to explain. Whatever this group is, they're empowering themselves and they're moving as quickly as they can, because I think they realize they will lose substantial power in 2022. And I think they realize that come 2024, they'll probably lose what little power they have. So they have to make strong, powerful moves to make sure that doesn't happen. So, of course, we're seeing some radical and nonsensical statements. Eric Weinstein, you may be familiar with him. He recently went off on Twitter following the death of John McAfee, who had said explicitly several times he would never take his own life. And now they're reporting he apparently took his own life, which most people don't actually believe. But Eric says something really interesting about the group that's currently, in control or occupying or whatever this thing is, and its centralization in the Democratic Party. I want to read for you what he says and then go through why it's so significant and why Joe Biden is wrong. There's a lot to talk about. So let me just say this. This is the crux of the story over at timcast.com. Biden says Patriots will need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. The reason this is so funny is that right now they're claiming there was an insurrection on January 6th. That's right. So let me get this straight. You've got a guy with Viking horns, no weapons, walking through a Capitol building, and it's the apocalypse, the insurrection. But Joe Biden's going to come out and say you need some nuclear weapons. You need some F-15s. So which is it? Do you actually believe that the insurrection was a very serious threat to this country? Or are you just going after anyone who dare oppose you with an iron fist? Seems like we know what's happening. Now, also mentioned there was a little old lady who got convicted of a misdemeanor charge. Doesn't really help the narrative that this was an insurrection, was it? So let me explain. Right now in Afghanistan, They are warning us. They are saying that if we leave Afghanistan, the Taliban will take over in 2 seconds. And videos are starting to pop up saying just that. That's strange. Joe Biden said you need nuclear weapons to go up against us. But we've been in this place for 20 years. And the moment we start leaving, it gets taken over by somebody else. So they didn't need nuclear weapons to go up against us. We could never win and stop the Taliban in 20 years. You see the point. The Second Amendment works, and it's working. Joe Biden would try to confuse you. Many of these establishment Democrat tribalists who don't care about anything other than winning will try to confuse you. The Second Amendment works and is working, and I'll explain. Some of you may have heard me explain this before, but for those that haven't. When the police went to Breonna Taylor's house and they kicked the door in or broke the door in, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend fired at them, hitting a cop in the leg. Horrifying story. And again, we don't want these things to happen, but this is important. They initially charged Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, but the charges were dropped. Why? Because you have a right to defend yourself in your home from serious threats. The security of a free state. It's not just about fighting the government. It's not just about fighting foreign adversaries. It's about defending yourself. You can't have a free state, a secure state, if individuals are under threat from criminals, from general violence. To maintain our strength, we have the right to protect ourselves. And you think about it this way. In some countries, they try to keep themselves strong and defended and protected by having a strong security state. But we're going at it from the grassroots level. If each and every individual is secure in their persons, then it's going to be impossible to penetrate, damage an economy, or take over this country. So the Second Amendment works. You see, these police officers who many on the left say were wrong and should be fired and all that stuff, fine. They know, each and every one of these cops, they know if you enter someone's home, you better be sure because they could be armed. Other countries don't have that. Now, I don't want people shooting at anybody. I don't care if it's, if it's a burglar. We don't want people to be shot at. The point is, you do have a right to defend yourself. If someone breaks in your home and is threatening your life, you have a right to defend yourself. Depending on your state, check your local laws. Castle Doctrine varies. But for the most part, we have a right to keep and bear arms for this reason. And that means even if it's a cop, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend was cleared of all wrongdoing. I don't like that any of that happened. I wish Breonna Taylor survived. I wish none of these cops none of this had happened. I wish the cop didn't get shot. But you understand the legal ramifications of the result of recognizing these things do happen, and you got to protect people's rights. What does this mean? In countries like Canada and the UK, they'll kick your door in, they'll beat your wife in front of you, and they'll drag her off. We have seen videos of this happening. So it's not about going up against Biden or the Capitol. It's not about waging some kind of insurrection. It's about literally just being secure in your persons and making sure the government knows that you have rights and they are on equal footing with you. I should say this. The government is of the people. They should be below in terms of respect and people's rights. But of course, the government is effectively an entity unto its own. So they need to be sure, be it federal police, federal law enforcement, or law enforcement, that when you enter someone's property, they could be just as armed as you are. In fact, I'll say this. A lot of people, conservatives, are armed more than the police. Like you can go to a gun store and buy steel core bullets over penetrating. These have penetrating power. There's reasons for it. So I find it funny when the left keeps trying to bring up hunting and things like that. Second Amendment says nothing of hunting. Self-defense in the home. There was this post by this guy. He's like, pretends to be a Marine, but he's an administrator. He was a Marine, but he was an administrator. So he's not actually well-versed in like firearms or anything. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. But he keeps putting out these things like no AR-15 should ever be used for home defense. Yes, they should. They absolutely should. Home defense involves shooting people when they break in your home and threaten your life. Now, again, I don't want that to happen. And I've argued with people that like I would do my best to not have to defend myself in this way, but sometimes you have no choice. But think about it. A weapon of war should not be used in home defense. That's what they say. What is a weapon of war? It's a weapon used in war. Okay, what is war? Combat between peoples. So what would you rather someone use? A Sabo Slug 12-gauge Remington that's going to put a 10-inch hole in some guy's chest when he comes in your house? Yikes. It's going to be really loud and the recoil will be massive because that's a deer hunting weapon. Or how about the weapon designed for combat against humans? Because that's typically what you'll be defending yourself against. The arguments are nonsensical. I will stress for the millionth time, I wish none of this had to be. But stay off people's property. Don't aggress against people. Defend and protect yourself, your rights. And we shouldn't have to be dealing with this. I think what we're seeing with Joe Biden, the comments he's making about gun control, which are really poorly thought out. The guy struggles to speak. And of course, the left's arguments are just meant to disarm the population, weaken us, because we are facing an occupation. I'm going to make a bold statement right now. We are under occupation. The U.S. has been conquered. And you've probably heard people on the Timcast IRL podcast say things that are similar to this, but I'll explain. I'll explain by showing you a thread from, oh, you know what? I don't know if I have the thread from Eric Weinstein pulled up. Oh, I do. Here we go. Eric Weinstein said, John reached out to me not all that long ago. I also will not kill myself. I'm not suicidal. Also, this is getting effing ridiculous. This authoritarian turnaround, Epstein, Wuhan, ivermectin, fortifying democracy, UAP, climate, mostly peaceful protest, leaked tax returns. Mandatory racism, exorcism at work, Me Too, witch hunts, shadow banning, build back better, trust and safety, TOS changes, compulsory speech, Antifa denials, labor shortage claims, denial, etc., is clearly a repudiation of all the U.S. stands for. He was bugged by it all. I want to stress, too, just for YouTube, none of this has anything to do with any medical anything, but in any circumstance, do not take medical opinions from anybody other than your personal doctor. That's what you need to know. I think that's the right approach, but I'm just saying that just in case. You go to your doctor, you don't get medical advice from people on the internet or on TV. He says, if you mention the enormous number of issues that are behaving in the same totally artificial fashion, the reputation attacks soar from all sides. What the hell has control of the U.S. and why is it localized to the Democratic Party and its associated media and businesses? I wish I could remember his call with more precision, but it was when I was in San Francisco. I couldn't believe I was known to him. He says he'll be taking a new approach to doxing, reputational attacks, or others as a result. Having menaced over asking for Epstein as a fake, disgraced financier to be called out by our press and connected to any intelligence services, this takes on a new meaning. When you can't call your own damn teams for help, who can you even call? I so hate this ish. Rip JM. The most important thing that he said, in my opinion, was, what the hell has control of the U.S. and why is it localized to the Democratic Party and its associated media and businesses? A very excellent point. What does have control of the U.S.? Wokeness, the manipulation, the lies, everything Eric Weinstein pointed out, and their efforts in desperate attempts to go after our right to keep and bear arms. This proves the Second Amendment works and is working. The Second Amendment is not primarily going to be individuals marching through the streets in a militia to defend themselves against a tyrannical government. Simply by virtue of people being armed. The authoritarians that have control of the U.S. and localized in the Democratic Party cannot make extremist moves against us. Again, you take a look at these videos out of Canada and the UK, and it is interesting, to say the least. When they kick the door in and you watch the woman screaming, "Stop, what are you doing?" And they say, "Shut your mouth." And they whack her in the face and they drag her out. Not too dissimilar to the scene in V for Vendetta. Now, okay, sure. In V for Vendetta, they were like black-bagging people and then executing them. And these people are getting arrested. But you need to understand that people are more worried about the anticipation of something than the act itself. So when you threaten someone with some kind of rendition, with kicking their door in and dragging them from their homes, they are more worried about the possibility than it actually happening. This is true. Most people are more worried about the anticipation. They fear the anticipation of pain more so than the actual pain itself. Think about it. You ever, I should say, excuse me, the anticipation of pain is more worrisome, more stressful. Think about going to the dentist, and you know they're going to give you that shot, that anesthesia. You're sitting there like, you're stressed out because you know it's going to hurt. And then literally 2-3 seconds, it's done. And it wasn't even that bad. We're more concerned about, with anticipation of it. This is what they know. They don't need to drag you from your home and throw you, put you behind a building with a firing squad like in V for Vendetta. That's what they say. They don't need to do that. They just need to scare you that you don't know what's going to happen to you and they're going to take you from your home. Because of the Second Amendment, it makes it very difficult for them to do this. I'll give you an example. A very horrifying story. They were serving a red flag warrant or whatever you want to call it, to an old man. I think this was in the Baltimore area. He didn't know. And they show up to his house and they said, "Sir, we have a red flag, warrant. We're here to take your weapons." And he answered the door with his weapon and he said, effectively, "From my cold dead hands." And so that's what they did. They killed him. Red flag laws are bad because individuals should have notice to challenge. If you want to do a red flag law, first of all, I think they're all bad in general. But at the very least, there should be notice given that you have 3 months to respond or something like that, to go to the court and file your response. But they don't do that. The police show up right away and say, "Hand over your weapons." And that never goes well for anybody. And that's exactly what we see in these circumstances. And there's been more than one where people have been killed. There's some very, very nasty stories. I'm not going to say too much. They're gruesome. But you take a look at what the federal government and the Democrats have consistently done, and it seems more and more obvious that these are not American ideals, that these individuals do not like you, they do not like us, and they have a large swath of brainwashed Americans marching in lockstep with them to give them exactly what they want. There's no gun problem in the United States. That's a fact. There isn't one. There is a problem with crime, but that crime has been going down. Violent crime has been on the decline for some time. Now, I will absolutely say that when these lunatics go out with a gun and they attack several people, these are horrifying moments, and they're a problem, and they can be solved. But it doesn't make sense, logically, to go after the arms of legal, law-abiding citizens who actually are not going to engage in even combat with the United States. You think about this. Joe Biden says you'll need an F-15 or a nuclear weapon. But there are people who have tons of weapons who, if the government shut up and said, "Hand them over," they would say, "Okay, sure. What am I going to do? Go up against the government?" No, of course not. Yet they want to take those weapons away too. Because right now, it's all about pressures. What we're seeing, and the way I described it, I tweeted it, is that the U.S. has been conquered. Maybe it's a bit hyperbolic, but you understand, based on what Eric Weinstein saying, that something is got a hold, is in control of the U.S. Channels like mine, it's a pressure release valve, because there may be many law-abiding citizens who will abide by these laws, but when tyrannical government shows up with a bus and says, "You're getting on the bus and we're shipping you off," people will say no. And we know what happens to people without guns when they confront people with guns. So there may be a regular working dad, a carpenter who's got a few guns in his basement. Maybe it's just for hunting. But that is a problem. Because if the government ever tried to do anything like pulling up a bus saying you are an undesirable and get on board, the guy would be like, "I may only have a Ruger 10/22, but I will do what I can to protect myself." A Ruger 10/22, it shoots 10/20 long. It shoots 22 long. They're not particularly large. But the point is, right now, we can't fathom things. We assume that it will never happen here. It will never get bad. But the founding fathers understood that it literally did. And so it's better to keep and bear arms, saying, "You know what? I understand it'll never happen here, but boy, am I going to keep and bear arms anyway, because you're better safe than sorry." No, but we see what happens in these other places. We see what happens in countries where they disarm the population. Before any major genocide or rounding up of citizens, they need to disarm them first. And that's why it's imperative that people say no. It shouldn't be an issue, right? The United States government should not care that I'm saying this. YouTube should not care I'm saying this. Because the government's never going to threaten to round people up and actually do it, right? Right. Okay. So if you admit, government, that you will never send buses to round people up, then you shouldn't be worried about us having guns out of fear that you would. Because you're not. Right? Right. So we're good. So I'll stress that point, about Biden saying F-15s and nuclear weapons. Something weird is happening in this country. We are being crushed every day. The media is lying every day. We got the story with Chris Rufo and Joy Reid, and they just lie, and the media lies, and we know they lie. Perhaps what's really happening is we are winning. That's the important point. Perhaps what's really happening is that we've been occupied for over 100 years. Perhaps what's happening is that occupation is collapsing. Many people point to Woodrow Wilson, the Federal Reserve, And now the system is aflame. Maybe what's really happening is it's not centralized to the Democratic Party. It was centralized to the Democrats and the Republicans until Trump broke the door down, and along with his supporters. And now they are struggling to maintain. You see, the reality is they lied to us all the time. It was always lies, lies, lies for the media. We just didn't hear anything else. Then the internet emerges. Trump storms through the gates. And now all of a sudden, we're seeing the lies. If it wasn't for our ability to communicate on the internet, we would just assume what CNN and MSNBC or whoever else was saying. We'd assume it was true, wouldn't we? Many would still doubt it, but it's only because of our ability to communicate that this is changing. So perhaps those who are occupying the U.S., whatever the hell it is, say Eric Weinstein, they're losing. They're panicking. And so they're ramping up their efforts. Steve Bannon said this to me a few days ago. We are winning. Violence is wrong. We don't want it because we are winning. When these moms see what's happening to their children in these schools, they're going to lose it because it seems that in response to the failings of this occupying force, they are turning up the heat in a desperate bid to try and regain control. The faster they're in quicksand and they're struggling as fast as they can, which only drags them down further. They need to relax, lay back, regain some composure, but they can't. They're frantic. They're falling apart. So when these moms see what's happening to their kids in schools, because these wokeists have been ramping up too much, the establishment has been pushing too hard, the whole thing's going to come crashing down in it. I certainly hope so. And I think Bannon makes a really, really strong argument for why we are winning. Michael Malice also makes a similar argument. Now, we can be pessimistic in the short term, but long term, I'm also fairly confident. I take a look at what I'm building here at timcast.com. You can see I'm in a new office right now. It's going well. And I firmly believe that this operation is going to be successful and it's going to change the world. But it's only because of your help. It's only because of you who are members and making this possible, because of course we are under threat. Of course, if we ever become a true challenge to that power structure, they will do everything to destroy us. And that means banning people. But it also means when you get a milquetoast kind of channel like Tim Pool's, you throttle it, you inhibit it, you make sure fewer and fewer people see it, out of sight, out of mind. And that may work. The problem they're dealing with is that we have the ability to share content. So at the Timcast IRL podcast, people keep saying they're not getting notifications anymore. It's unfortunate for those trying to shut this content down that we have people willing to share the videos. We don't need your algorithms. It's an uphill battle, and it means we must be fighting every single day, figuratively, but it's something we have to do. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.